Good morning, and welcome to our Candidates Forum, sponsored by DAWNY, the Developmental Disabilities Alliance of Western New York. DAWNY is a collaborative group of not-for-profit organizations that provide services to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the westernmost part of New York State, from Buffalo, Niagara, over to the Finger Lakes, and down to the southern. I'm Jeff Patterson, chairperson for DAWNY's Government Affairs Committee. And I'm honored to be your host today as we speak with candidates for state and federal offices. Today's forum focuses on the Rochester and Finger Lakes area. An earlier forum was held focusing on the Buffalo Niagara region, and that is available for viewing on DAWNY's channel on YouTube. We thank all of the candidates who are taking the time to join us today. Candidates were not given the option to send representatives. Only candidates themselves are able to participate in this discussion. Each candidate has a total of 5 minutes. I will pose 2 questions to each candidate, and then as time permits, each candidate will have the chance to make a closing statement. Detailed versions of the questions were shared with all candidates in advance, so I will read shortened versions to allow more time for candidates to speak. We began doing this event on YouTube at the height of the pandemic and have found that it allows us to reach more people and to include more candidates. That having been said, this is Zoom and it is dependent on technology. And as we know, that can be glitchy. We've tested everything, but you never know when there will be a glitch. So if that occurs, please bear with us and know that we will get things straightened out as quickly as possible. I would like to thank Wendy McCarthy, Susan Barlow, Dana Caratinuto, Kevin Horrigan, and all who have helped to put together this event. We hope it is helpful to you as you decide which candidates are worthy of your support. Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th. To find out about early voting and mail-in opportunities, call the Board of Elections in your county or visit their website. However, and whenever you do it, please vote. You've heard enough from me, and we'd like to begin to hear from the candidates. Our first guest is from the 130th New York State Assembly District, the challenger in that district, Scott Comegys. So we welcome Mr. Comegys on to join us, and there he is. Good morning.
Good morning.
We shared detailed questions in writing in advance, so I'm going to read shortened versions of the 2 questions to you for response. And then with whatever time we have left, we'll invite you to make closing remarks. So our first question is this. For more than a decade, New York State did not adequately invest in the IDD system. Given inflation, a statewide coalition is seeking a statutory cost of living adjustment for not-for-profit providers in next year's budget based on the Consumer Price Index, as well as a $2 per hour add-on to direct support wages to stabilize our system. Will you be a champion for us by insisting that leadership include these priorities in the budget?
That was an easy one for me to answer. The answer is absolutely yes. You know, we're talking about essential workers, and we've heard a lot about essential work in the past 2 years, haven't we? But this is critically essential work. You're talking about people who are, providing services that other people depend on for their day-to-day lives. And we need to be treating them as the professionals that they are. The rates that we've been paying and honestly, the gutting of the finances in a lot of these systems is offensive. And, we really need to say, if we're going to dedicate our state resources to helping people live better lives, which we should be doing, then this has to be done. So yeah, absolutely, I will be championing this and making sure there's good oversight to make sure it really happens.
Thank you. That leads very well into our next question, which is once the funds are allocated, they have to flow. And the process of setting reimbursement rates for not-for-profit providers is badly broken. Rates are typically months or even years behind, leaving providers to guess what they will be paid for services they're already providing. And often the state claws back money that providers have already spent. What will you do to address these chronic problems?
And again, it all becomes part of the oversight. We have a duty to make sure that these agencies are able to provide the services they need. The agencies themselves need to have good planning good financial planning, so they know services they can provide. This is an investment in our community. And again, I think that the state legislature has an absolute duty to provide some oversight. And if things are not flowing, why are they not flowing, and how do we get them flowing? And it's a two-part goal there. I want to know what's going on and how are we going to correct it in a timely fashion. I want providers to know, without a doubt, what the rates are going to be. I want them to be able to spend what they need to do, and not necessarily extend credit to New York State, but understand that they're going to be paid. We have a contract with them. This is our commitment to them.
Okay, thank you. So we have about a minute and a half left, and invite you to make any closing remarks that you'd like.
Well, thank you. The essence of my campaign, and this is the third time I'm running for New York State Assembly, but it all has always boiled down to this. The goal that I'm committing to is one that everyone in our society can live the lives they successfully live the lives they choose to live as their genuine selves, with prosperity, dignity, security, and justice. And that really does mean everybody. I mean, we have to seek out actively people that are not necessarily being as fortunate or as who have not had as much access to services or to that kind of life, and do what we can to achieve that equity for them. With that goal in mind, everything we talk about goes through that lens, and I think that's what we need to focus on more than anything else in the state.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. We know it's busy out there on the campaign trail, and we appreciate your taking the time to join us. That is from the 130th New York State Assembly District, Challenger Scott Comegys. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Coming up next is from the 135th New York State Assembly District, incumbent Assembly Member Jen Lunsford. So we'll give Assembly Member Lunsford a minute to connect, and then we'll dive in. There she is. Good morning, Assembly Member.
Hello, how are you guys?
We're doing well. Thanks for taking some time to talk with us. We sent out some written questions that were very long, so I'm just going to read condensed versions of them and give you a chance to respond, and then whatever time we have left, we'll invite you to make some closing remarks.
Sure.
So the first question is this: for more than a decade, New York State did not adequately invest in the IDD system. And given inflation, a statewide coalition is seeking a statutory cost of living adjustment for not-for-profit providers in next year's budget, based on the Consumer Price Index, as well as a $2 per hour add-on to direct support wages to stabilize our system. Will you be a champion for us by insisting that leadership include these priorities in the budget?
I will, as I was a champion in 2022 and 2021 regarding funding for OPWDD and all of our not-for-profit service partners. IDD issues are one of the most common kinds of inquiries my office gets. My district is home to some of the best schools in our county. And as a result, I think we kind of disproportionately attract families who are looking for better school environments for kids who require extra support. So we have so many families that are affected by IDD issues. As a result, this is something that's important to my people, not just me. I was a disability attorney for many years, so this is a passion for me. But this is what we hear every single day in our office. It's what I hear at the doors. It's something that we try very hard to advance. And when you're talking about these sorts of issues that are budgetary, people in the majority, this is unfortunate, it's just the way this works, are the only elected officials who can advocate for funding in the budget. If your priorities are funding, you need to support a Democrat, because Republicans don't have a seat at the table for that. They don't do budget letters. They don't talk about what goes into the assembly budget. So the people who are in a place to advance that cause are the people with a seat at the table. We included your priorities in our 21 budget letter and our 22 budget letter. We fought very hard for that 5.4%, and then also for pushing it out. And right when we first came into office, we were heavily involved in trying to get that the 5% that had been withheld by Cuomo for reimbursements to our not-for-profits released. We were signed on to many, many letters to the executive, partnering with then Chair Tom Abadani, who unfortunately has lost his primary, so we're going to lose him as a chair. I'm waiting kind of with bated breath to see who the chair of that committee is going to be. And next year, when we put in for new committees, people with disabilities is a committee I'm going to request. It's kind of hard apparently to get off the committees you're on, I've been told, but this is my first foray into that. So I'm going to see what I can push. It's people with disabilities and judiciary I'm trying to yank myself onto. But these are going to be huge priorities, and tying all rates to consumer price indexes, not just you, but everything we're constantly fighting over raising is what we need to do to help the people we give a statutorily mandated responsibility to. Never mind like the moral imperative to help people, we legally require providers to help people, and then we handicap them by not giving them the funding they need to perform the services we're asking. So I think it's the least we can do.
Okay, thank you. A closely related second question, and you've alluded to this.
You asked the same question twice.
Is the process of setting reimbursement rates for not-for-profit providers is badly broken. Rates lag by months or even years, leaving providers to guess what they have to spend for services they're already providing, and sometimes having money clawed back that's already been spent. So what can be done to address these problems?
So this is always kind of it's a two-pronged effect. And I feel like even in my short time in Albany, I see us doing the one side and not the other side. We see it in especially in the O agencies. We're seeing with opioids right now, where we're adding more beds, but we're not raising the rates, or we're the reality of the workforce crisis across all sectors, but particularly in direct service positions, particularly in OPWDD, is an enormous problem, and probably the biggest issue we are dealing with as a state. Raising the rates is how you retain and recruit people. I don't understand why this is. Don't even get me started on early intervention services. I'm going to throw someone out a window about the rates on the early intervention services, where maybe we could save some money on the OPWDD side if we funded early intervention services. It's like the steam comes out my ears. Again, this is a constant battle, and sometimes just from a cost perspective, you're picking. And there's a part of me that almost wants to say, raise the rates. We've done so much on the other side. At this point, let's focus on raising the rates, because the workforce issue is such a weight on the system right now, and we really need to do something to amp that up.
Okay, well, thank you. And at this point, you have time to make any closing remarks that you'd like.
Sure. As I said at the beginning, this is a passion project for me and the people in my office. And not only do I come from a disability background as a lawyer, two of my staffers had parents who worked in the state. I've been endorsed by PEF because of my, full-throated support for, mostly these workforce issues. And we, in partnership with Assemblymember Sarah Clark, were able to host a really important forum with our new OPWDD commissioner, who I don't think people can, appreciate what a sea change it is to have a commissioner come in and just acknowledge the problem is real. That's such a difference from Cuomo. We can't fix everything, and we're trying really hard, but having someone look you in the eye and say the thing you're seeing is real and a problem, and I'm trying. The Cuomo administration was kind of deny, act like everything was okay. I've never seen someone so just openly opposed to helping people with disabilities as Andrew Cuomo. It was a wild situation. So I think that we are in a better position where we're at least acknowledging the reality of the problem and taking steps towards fixing it. There's, people with competing viewpoints on how best to fix these situations and how much to rely on the state versus private providers. But I think that having everyone at the table and continuing to have these conversations as a group is really, really important, so that no one is caught by surprise or left out. The people who do this work are the ones who know best how to fix the problems that we have. So thank you guys so much for all the expertise that you lend to our office throughout the year. We've relied upon you several times. These can be very wonky, very technical issues, and having families and providers tell us what our laws look like in action is the way we figure out how to fix problems. So I am very grateful to you for all of your time.
Well, we greatly appreciate your time and accessibility, and I will certainly, on behalf of the provider community, echo your positive comments about OPWDD Commissioner Carrie Neifeld, who has been a true breath of fresh air for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're very, very lucky.
Yeah.
And to have her, she came out in person in Rochester. That's crazy.
She's everywhere. Sometimes we think there may be more than one of her. So, but I don't want to
That's
start
a
any
secret.
conspiracy theories on the internet. So I mean that as a compliment. So again, thank you so much for your time and your accessibility. That is from the 135th New York State Assembly District, incumbent Assembly Member Jen Lunsford. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thanks. And we got redistricted. I just want to cover where my new district is Penfield, East Rochester, Parrenton, Fairport, Pittsford, and Mendon. So we dropped Webster and picked up Pittsford, Mendon. All
Got it. Okay, thanks.
right, thanks. Have a
Great
great
to
day.
see you. Take
Bye-bye.
care. And the Assembly member makes a great point that I wanted to make sure to raise, that all the districts were reconfigured this year. And I'm sure you heard at some point or another, it was quite an eventful process that had several components to it. It did end up in the end that a special master designated by the courts finalized the district lines. And so as a result of that, your representative may not be, come January, who it was in the past. Your district may be different. So it's certainly worth looking up on your Board of Elections website which district you're in, who your representative is or will be, and who's running in that district, so you can be well prepared when you walk in to vote. You may see some unfamiliar names. So again, we encourage you to be educated and to be prepared. Use your Board of Elections in your county as a resource. Their websites, as well as calling or stopping by. If you need some guidance, you can find out about any early voting opportunities. You can find out about mail-in voting opportunities. And you can also, should you need any clarification, learn about which Assembly and Senate and congressional districts you are in coming up in this election cycle, as again, it may have changed your previous times. So with that, we would like to bring in on the federal side, a nice little change of pace here from the 25th district in the United States House of Representatives, incumbent Congressman Joseph Morelle, a familiar face from state government before going into the federal government. So Congressman Morelle, we'll welcome you. And we had set out some long written questions. I'm going to condense them a little bit, pose them to you, and then whatever time we have left, we'll leave for some closing remarks. So I'll jump in with question one. We are calling for direct support professionals to have a separate standard occupational classification from the Bureau of Labor Statistics so that we can better understand our workforce. The next period for new classifications is not till 2028, and we don't have time to wait. So we would love to see legislation to address this need. And are asking if you would take a leadership role in introducing and supporting this legislation.
Well, good morning, Jeff. Nice to
Morning.
see you. Nice to be with all our friends again. Grateful for everything you do, and just appreciate the chance to interact. And we have had a long relationship during my tenure in the state legislature, and appreciate all the work that we were able to do collectively over the time during my tenure there, and certainly now that I'm in Congress, have worked with folks around the Disability Integration Act, the Empower Act, the Heads Up Act, different pieces of legislation to help serve those with different abilities. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to be with you. You mentioned classification. I do know that I co-sponsor, and I understand the process for this is a little cumbersome and difficult. And I know that the classifications, the standard is typically about 8 or so years in order to have a classification designated. And I think right now, as I recall, the classification currently has you under other positions like nursing assistants, home health aides. And I know you mentioned a couple in the question that I had not been aware of, that you didn't have your own classification. There is a bill, HR 4779, which you, I'm sure, are very familiar with, which is a bill introduced by my colleague, Kathleen Rice, who sadly has chosen not to run for re-election. So someone will take up the bill in her absence. I'd love to consider working on that and possibly introducing it if she hasn't identified someone to take the lead on that. But what that does, the bill focuses on addressing the workforce shortage among direct care providers and direct support professionals. And it would essentially, the bill does this, it doesn't classify it. I think that has to be done. There's a process to have that SOC, but the bill will focus on addressing workforce shortages by improving data collection, helping identify where there are impediments to targeted workforce programs. So I'm a co-sponsor of that bill. I think that's the precursor to getting the designations, to be able to have the data collection and to be able to demonstrate to folks that make this classification under the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It would give them the data necessary to make the make the case pretty strongly, in my view, that this needs to be a separate classification. And look, we're all facing challenges in terms of labor shortages. And when it comes to direct care professionals, this is really critically important. Our clients and patients and folks are impacted dramatically when there's significant change in turnover in staff professionals. And it's hard for a lot of our agencies to compete just on a dollar by dollar basis with folks who are, frankly, even in the fast food industry, paying substantially more than some people are able to earn in this field. So it's frankly going to be, in my view, even more of a challenge in the outlying years. So we really have to get on this. I think Kathleen Rice's bill is the way to begin it, but I'm obviously open to other suggestions people might have.
Okay, great. Well, I was taking copious notes while you were talking. Appreciate all the background information. It's very helpful. The second question is that President Biden has twice proposed significant investments into home and community-based services. President's proposals would have led to better pay and benefits for workers, enhanced quality of life for families, and help people with disabilities to live independently and get competitive jobs. These executive proposals were ultimately not included by the legislation that was passed by both houses. So do you support increases in HCBS funding to the states to reduce waiting lists for disability supports?
I do. I think I began my public career in the county legislature. I was talking about in-home services. And frankly, for a bunch of obvious reasons, it seems to me. First is people just do better in non-institutional settings where it's appropriate, right? And we should always be driving our service delivery whenever it's possible and appropriate in homes and in settings where people are most comfortable. So in order to do that, frankly, the second thing is it's probably long-term, not only better outcomes for the people we serve, but it's better for government and better for taxpayers because I think it's more cost effective. So as you referenced, when we did Build Back Better, which we in the House supported, there was $150 billion for these services, and something I was proud to support. We couldn't get the United States Senate to concur with us. We did do in the American Rescue Plan, I think included $12.7 billion, a number pretty close to that, and about just short of 30 million, I think, went to the state of New York, but clearly not enough. I mean, it was, less than 1/10 of what we wanted to do in the House. So I'm committed to continue to push for this. And frankly, if you think about it broadly, both in terms of the DD community, the elderly, I mean, having more service delivery in the homes as these populations grow is going to be critically important. So I'm going to continue to support. I'm going to continue to advocate for it. I think I have proven in the past that I'm anxious and willing to step up to the plate and to provide support for this community and in other ways that we can be helpful as well.
Thank you. And we have about a minute left for any closing remarks you'd like to make.
Well, you guys are fast, but I will say this. I'm really proud to work alongside all of you. And I mentioned my time in the State Assembly, where I worked to create the bill that provided mandatory health insurance coverage for people on the autism spectrum, created the legislation, created state licenses for applied behavioral analysis, CDPAP legislation for those adults who have custodial parents that need to take care of them. passed that legislation, got that done for our Medicaid program under the federal system. So I've had the real privilege of working alongside with people in this community, and grateful for the partnership and the friendship. And I'll continue to do everything I can to make sure that people with other abilities are served well by our government.
Okay, well, thank you. We know how busy you are. We appreciate your always being accessible to us. That's Congressman Joe Morelle. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks, everyone.
Up next, we have back to the state legislature from the 133rd New York State Assembly District, incumbent Assembly Member Marjorie Burns. We'll give her a moment to connect. Again, from the 133rd Assembly District, this is Assembly Member Marjorie Burns. Okay, there we are. Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, good morning. Thanks for joining
We're
us.
having some problems over here, so my apologies.
No worries. It's always a risk with these Zoom forums here. So we sent over a couple of very detailed written questions. I'm just going to read brief summaries of them. I'll pose them to you, and then any time we have left over, we'll invite you to make any closing remarks that you'd like. First question is, for more than a decade, New York State did not adequately invest in the IDD system. Given inflation, a statewide coalition is seeking a statutory cost of living adjustment for not-for-profit providers in next year's budget based on the Consumer Price Index, as well as a $2 per hour add-on to direct support wages to stabilize our system. Will you be a champion for us by insisting that leadership include these priorities in the budget?
Okay. Oh, you want me to answer now or?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my apologies. I thought it was when we went on.
You're on.
Oh.
We're in.
Sorry, the one that's being streamed is a little bit behind. No,
Oh, okay.
It's there's no question about it. The reality is, particularly in my district, I have had closing of so many group homes that have had just a horrible effect on the disability community and their families. And my work, obviously, with all of the other organizations in this area, even apart from the group homes, has clearly demonstrated, without any doubt, that both from my conversations again with families, with the people who are the staff, as well as anyone else connected, that the failure to establish and pay decent wages has had the dramatic effect of leading directly to the decreased and inability to properly staff our group homes and so many other different programs. So it is absolutely imperative that we do it. It's been promised before. I stood at press conferences with direct care workers, be fair to direct care, when representatives from the governor's office came out and said, no, we'll do it, we promise, went back behind closed doors again, and then it didn't happen. So you have to have truth in advertisement. Employees and employers need to know what the ground rules are and how they know how to support their families. And we need the stability that this brings to all of our facilities in order to ensure proper care.
Okay, thank you. So the second question is you've touched on here that the process of getting approved funds into the hands of providers is badly broken. Rates are often months or even years behind, leaving providers to guess what they'll be paid for services they're already providing. And often the state claws back money that providers have already spent. So what will you do to address these chronic problems with rate setting?
This is one of the problems with one-party rule, so that people can make promises and not deliver. If we do have a scenario where either through the governor's office or in some other fashion, we have more of a balance, so that when people, no matter who they are, make promises, be it the governor or be it the legislature, that certain things are going to be funded at a certain level, they will be obligated because they will be held accountable. When there is one party rule and there's no accountability, I believe this allows for backsliding. It allows for manipulation of funds so that you can promise one thing, you can hold off on it so that you keep the coffers running for the state budget because you're holding their monies while they're suffering. And then you're the one who is being the beneficiary by holding those resources and being able to allocate them in different ways while you delay releasing them on the other end. If we have more balance, if we have checks and balances, if we have accountability, then I believe we will see that promises made will be promises kept. My intention is absolutely to make sure that that happens.
Okay,
Right
thank
now,
you.
Right now, I think we get lip service, and lip service is not helping.
Okay. And so we have about a minute left for any closing remarks you'd like to make.
I just want to reiterate that everything I've seen has demonstrated that the work that's being done in the disability rights community is so incredibly important. And again, not only does it assist the families, families of people who are older, who need help, people who have adult children, and they now are becoming elderly and cannot care for their children. So they have to rely on the state to step in because they simply can't do it anymore, or young people who are in need of services from the get-go, whose families are never regrettably able to care for them, but want them cared for in a way that they deserve. Across the entire spectrum of our society, we have people in need and we have obligations. What is it that they say? Our society is judged by how we treat our most vulnerable. And if we don't step up to the plate and start being accountable to ourselves for how we are treating those among us, then shame on us. I will do my best, and I have always done it, to help people in need. The group homes in my area have been a dramatic example of how horrible things can happen to good people only because of lack of funding from the state. And I'll continue to fight for that group home money to be restored and for all the other needs, and make the commitment to the community.
Thank you. And we know how busy you are and fighting through connection problems and whatever else. Appreciate your time and accessibility. That's from the 133rd Assembly District, incumbent Assembly Member Marjorie Burns. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Bye. Next up, we have from the 138th New York State Assembly District, incumbent Assembly Member Harry Bronson. So give the Assembly Member a minute to connect. Again, from the 138th Assembly District, Assembly Member Harry Bronson. Good morning, Assembly Member. Good to see you.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here today.
We sent along some very detailed written questions. I'm going to read condensed versions of them so you have time to talk. And then any time we have left over, we'll save for some closing remarks. So first question is, for more than a decade, New York State did not adequately invest in the IDD system. And now, given inflation, a statewide coalition is seeking a statutory cost of living adjustment for not-for-profit providers in next year's budget based on the Consumer Price Index, as well as a $2 per hour add-on to direct support wages to stabilize our system. Will you be a champion for us by insisting that leadership include these priorities in the budget?
The short answer is yes. As you all know, I have been a champion in this area, fighting for the ability for our workforce to get fairly paid. We have not done a great job in that regard as New York State is concerned. We battled oftentimes with OPWDD. As you probably know, there was a public hearing recently, and I think it was September 13th, chaired by our committee, new committee, the Committee for People with disabilities, which I think that's a real statement by the Assembly of how important we think this issue is. But we haven't done as good of a job as we should. And yes, I will fight for that COLA. I will fight that it's done in a timely way, and that it's an adequate COLA to hopefully address the inflation that all of our families are facing.
Okay, thank you. The second question is that the process of setting reimbursement rates for not-for-profit providers is badly broken. Rates typically lag months or even years, leaving providers to guess how much they'll be paid for services they're already providing. And at times, the state claws back money that providers have already spent. What will you do to address these chronic problems?
Yeah, so, we at the state level, sometimes we mandate minimum wage and hopefully we'll do that for all of you and get an increase in your wage levels. But at the state, we control parts of the revenue that allows the not-for-profit providers to pay to their employees. So what we need to do is, as a state, number one, increase the reimbursement rates to the extent we possibly can do that. And number two, have that be timely rolled out. So, I will work with the agency to make sure that happens and to advocate in other areas where we have had increases and there's been a delay, like with our home care workers and health workers that we did bonuses for this year. I've been in constant communication with the agency, in that case, the Department of Health, to see what we could do to facilitate the rollout in a better way. I will do the same here and to make sure that the rates are fair and that we get them rolled out as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you. We have about a minute left for any closing remarks you'd like to make.
Yeah, I have been in office a long time. I'm in my 12th year. I'm hoping to get another 2-year cycle. But this is one of the areas where I think we have not done a good job. And that's the area of helping our people and communities with disabilities. And we need to do a better job. Many of you have, I think, probably heard my philosophy that really guides my life and certainly guides me in public service, guided me when I was an anti-discrimination lawyer. And that's no matter who you are, what you look like, who you love, where you come from, and what your abilities. We all have dignity, and with that dignity comes respect. We deserve full equity and equality and an opportunity to succeed, however you define that word, success. That certainly applies to people with disabilities, and it applies to all the workers who work long hours, weekends, and overtime caring for those loved ones. So that's what's going to guide me. And I want fairness, I want justice, I want folks who are facing challenges, whatever they might be, for us to help give them a hand and create policies and have funding that allows them to lead the fullest life possible for them and for their families. So that's what's going to guide me, and I look forward to our work together as we've worked together so far.
Great. Well, thank you. We know how busy you are. We appreciate your time. That's from the 138th Assembly District, Assemblymember Harry Bronson. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Take care, everybody.
Now, next we have from the 132nd New York State Assembly District, incumbent Assemblymember Phil Palmisano. We'll give the Assembly member a moment to connect. Looks like he's on the run here. So good morning, Assembly member. Thanks for joining us. We had sent along some written questions. I'll read very condensed versions of them and ask you to respond, and then we'll leave whatever time we have left for any closing remarks. So the first question is, for more than a decade, New York State did not adequately invest in the IDD system. Given inflation, a statewide coalition is seeking a statutory cost of living adjustment for not-for-profit providers in next year's budget based on the Consumer Price Index, as well as a $2 per hour add-on to direct support wages to stabilize our system. Will you be a champion for us by insisting that leadership include these priorities in the budget?
Absolutely, 100%. I've been a strong advocate for supporting our direct support professionals who are at the forefront of providing and improving the quality of care and quality of life of our most vulnerable citizens, those with intellectual and developmental disabilities. It's something that needs to be a priority. I've often said budgeting is all about priorities. And if we're not taking care of our most vulnerable citizens, those with intellectual and developmental disabilities, what are we saying about ourselves as a state if we're not prioritizing it as part of the budget? So I will do everything I can in my power as a legislator and my platform. I'm a member of the Ways and Means Committee. I will certainly bring that up during budget hearings and work with you for time and time again. I also had experience before I got involved in politics where I worked as a direct care worker for our local ARC in Steuben ARC, and I also worked summers at some developmental center working with our most vulnerable citizens. That's always stuck with me. It's always been a priority to me and always will continue to be a priority. It's mind blowing to me that someone can go work at McDonald's and Taco Bell and make a higher wage than someone who is tasked with improving the quality of life and quality care of our most vulnerable citizens. That's just completely out of line, and the state needs to take a lead and fix this if we're the Empire State.
Okay, thank you. Second question is that the process of setting reimbursement rates for not-for-profit providers is badly broken. Rates typically lag months or even years. Providers aren't sure what they're getting paid for the services they're providing, and often the state claws back money that has already been spent. So what will you do to address these chronic problems?
I will work with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to highlight this issue. I've heard from my providers in my district about this issue as well for years. And the other area this comes into play that I get concerned about as well, when we do enhancements, whether it's a COLA and how long that takes to be implemented, and when it does finally go through, like with Be Fair to Direct initiatives that we had years ago, I always worry about the state coming in on the backside and impacting and slicing on the reimbursement rate, which is critical to providing those wages, providing that quality of care, access to services. And that needs to be addressed, needs to be called out, especially these budget hearings. That's something we can do as members of Ways and Means during budget debate, one house budgets. This just needs to be a priority. To think that there are some delays coming forward with the COLA is ridiculous to me. And then we need to be addressed that. It needs to be a priority and will be a priority for me. And our conference has always kind of led on this issue. We had hearings back in 2016 where we traveled the state. We put out a CARES plan, which addresses the wage issue, transportation, also the shelter workshop issue, which was really a big issue and continues to be from my perspective. That needs to be a priority, and we need to work together. This is not a Republican or Democratic issue. This is a quality of care and quality of life issue for our most vulnerable citizens, individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities. And that must be a priority at every level, whether it's reimbursements or providing wages, good living wages to those who are at the forefront of providing that care.
Okay, thank you. So we have about 30 seconds left for any closing remarks you'd like to make.
Well, I just wanted to say, you can always count on me for my unequivocal support to enhance, support, and improve the quality of life and quality of care of our most vulnerable citizens, intellectual and developmental disability people. I think we should, as we get into the budget process, I would like to work with you and my colleagues. Maybe we should do some rallies around the state before the budget time after the election and just highlight this issue before the governor puts out her budget. If we can get this proposal into her budget, that will help the process as we move forward. But I think public rallies around the state, I will attend in my region and go to other ones if I can. We need to spotlight this issue. We need to work as a team, both members on both sides of the aisle, and work with you. And thank you for the incredible work you do each and every day to advocate for these incredible individuals that need our help, need our support, and we need to be there for them, just like we know they're there for us.
Well, thank you very much. We know how busy you are. Appreciate your time. From the 132nd Assembly District, Assembly Member Phil Palmisano. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Be well.
You too. Next, we have from the 57th New York State Senate District, incumbent Senator George Borrello. And I believe the senator has the sole distinction this year of having been on both the Western Forum on Wednesday and the Rochester Finger Lakes Forum on Friday. So thanks for coming twice. That's quite a commitment.
My pleasure, anytime.
So you know the drill. We've got a couple of condensed questions we're going to ask, and then whatever time's left at the end, we'll save for your closing comments.
Sure.
First question is, for more than a decade, New York State did not adequately invest in the IDD system. We're seeking a statutory COLA for not-for-profit providers next year. based on the consumer price index, $2 per hour add-on to direct support wages. Will you be a champion for these issues with leadership?
First of all, thank you again for having me on. And absolutely, what has happened, especially under the Cuomo administration, was absolutely shameful. You have a $220 billion budget, and yet we can't give people increases. Not only that, for a decade, reimbursements dropped. And the support for people that care for our most vulnerable citizens has been jeopardized. I'm a business owner. I'm an employer. I know what it takes. Number one, for people that have to work hard under conditions, that aren't the most favorable. But most importantly, I know the common sense part of when you lose people because you aren't paying enough, that the cost of having to recruit and train new people and have high turnover is bad for you. But more importantly, it's bad for the people that you're trying to serve. So absolutely, we need to pay more. New York State, by the way, is not shy in telling other businesses how they should, pay. They're telling our farmers how much they should pay overtime. They're telling businesses like myself in the restaurant industry how much we should pay. Yet they aren't stepping up and paying. We saw reimbursements that were cut for years for our nursing homes. The people that are, again, dealing with some of our most vulnerable citizens. Over the course of a decade. So we need to right the ship, and I'm certainly in favor of that. And I was certainly very supportive of the inclusion of the 5.4% increase in this last budget. We need to do the things to support the people, that are caring for the people that need the most care.
Okay, and the second question deals with getting funding into the hands of providers once it's approved. So the rate setting process lags by months or even years, leaving providers to guess what they'll be paid for the services they're already providing. Sometimes state claws back money that providers have already spent. So what will you do to address these chronic?
Well, I've been vocal about this. We see this all over New York State government. Once again, with this massive budget, with money to do things like spend nearly $1 billion a year to subsidize the New York City transit system, and yet we can't get payments once again to people that are caring for our vulnerable citizens. I know that the OPWDD is trying to switch, from a cost-based methodology to an acuity-based methodology, but we haven't seen that yet, and we don't know what the impact will be. The bottom line is, I don't know anybody that can go years without paying their bills and still survive. Only the government can do that. I was a vocal opponent when Cuomo decided to suspend the prompt payment policy in New York State. I think that was an abuse of power, and certainly not necessary when we have all of this money floating out there. New York has to get back to the basics, and the basics are understanding that our job is to keep our citizens safe and to protect those that need care. And we've gotten away from that for so many political reasons. But absolutely, I think that needs to change. Like I said, I've been vocal on this topic in the past, and unfortunately, it happens all over in all areas in state budget. When I became a brand new senator, because my predecessor left rather abruptly, I walked into more than 70 grants that were unfulfilled, some of them going back years, to the tune of millions of dollars. To fire departments that perform rescues in places like Zoar Valley that were waiting on funding for rescue equipment that they purchased. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's just no shame when it comes to delaying payments on the part of New York State government, and that needs to change.
Okay, thank you. So we have about 30 seconds left for any closing remarks you'd like to make.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to you folks, because you don't do this job for the money. You don't do it for the glory. You do it because you care. And that is a special calling. And I realize that people do it because they love it, but they need to be compensated. They need to be compensated properly. When you're caring for people, you're taking on a lot of responsibility, and you're not making any more than taking a job at a fast food restaurant. And that truly has to change.
Okay. Well, thanks again for your time and for doing double duty this week. That's from
My
the
pleasure.
57th Senate District, Senator George Borrello. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator.
Have a great weekend.
Okay. Up next, we have from the 133rd Assembly District, Sarah Spezzano. So welcome, Ms. Spezzano, to come on. And We will start with our questions. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Okay, we had provided some written questions. I'm going to do a condensed version of them to give you more time to talk. And then whatever time we have left at the end, we'll save for some closing comments. So first question is, for more than a decade, New York State did not adequately invest in the IDD system. Given inflation, a statewide coalition is seeking a statutory cost of living adjustment for not-for-profit providers in next year's budget based on the Consumer Price Index, as well as a $2 per hour add-on to direct support wages to stabilize our system. Will you be a champion for us by insisting that leadership include these priorities in the budget?
So to answer this question simply, yes, I would. But to expand on that a little bit, I think it's important for all of us to recognize that disability service providers play a critical role in our communities, because not only are they responsible for the physical and mental well-being and health of over 1 million adults and children throughout the state, but they're also major employers in our community. They provide thousands of hours of community service. Many of these organizations have social enterprises that support their businesses, and that provides employment not only to the people that they serve, but oftentimes to people without disabilities in the community as well. And our communities would be vastly different without the services that these organizations are providing and that they continue to provide in our communities. And these organizations cannot function properly. They cannot do their jobs. They cannot provide these programs and services unless they have staff to do the work, and staff that is well compensated and willing to stay not only in the area, but in their jobs, and not have to face these massive turnovers that are happening throughout the state because they are being inadequately compensated for the level of work and the level of care that they're providing, not only again to the people that they're serving, but to everything that they're doing for our communities in general. So yes, I would support the COLA on the Consumer Price Index and the $2 add-on wage for all of the work that the direct support professionals are providing.
Okay, thank you. The second question is, when funding is approved, it needs to flow. And the process of setting reimbursement rates for not-for-profit providers is badly broken. Rates typically lag months or even years. Providers have to guess what they're going to be paid for services they're already providing. And at times, the state claws back money that providers have already spent. What would you do to address those chronic problems?
So I will start off by saying that I work for a nonprofit organization, so I am acutely aware of how these organizations are impacted when they're receiving funding from the state. That, as you stated, can take months to sometimes years to actually make its way to the organizations. It puts our organizations in such a bind because they have to make tough decisions about, they have these programs that they have to provide, that they have to sustain. That's why they're receiving the funding, but they don't have the funding. So they have to figure out how to continue to provide it without funding that they were promised. And that makes them have to make tough decisions about staffing. Do we pull staffing from other areas to support this? About layoffs, potentially having to lay off staff members and then put their workload onto the other staff members that are probably already being overworked. And as we've just discussed in the previous question, oftentimes underpaid. And then it also can lead organizations to having to take out loans to cover the cost of the programs that they are trying to continue to provide to our communities. So the state needs to be held accountable for this lack of reimbursement. One of the things that I think needs to become commonplace is for the state to reimburse organizations for any interest they incurred on having to borrow money either against their own lines of credit or through any other kind of loans, because they did not receive the funding that was promised to them by the state. And we need to set up an accountability program for the state. Funding should not be taking that long to get down the pipe when these organizations are providing services that the state isn't able to provide, but that are benefiting the people that live in New York State. So creating legislation to hold the state accountable and to see these wait times shortened legally to how long the state is able to withhold funding or how long the state is able to take to get that funding down to organizations needs to be reduced.
Okay, thank you. We have about 30 seconds left for any closing remarks you'd like to make.
I think that, I guess for closing remarks, I would just say that, again, I understand the precarious situations that many of our organizations are being placed in, especially having gone through the pandemic as nonprofit organizations and having money withheld even further. The workload on staff has increased during this time, and we need to do all that we can to continue to support these working professionals and the organizations that are providing services that would change the face of our communities if they weren't there.
Okay, well, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. That is Challenger Sarah Spezzano from the 133rd Assembly District. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, we have from the 55th New York State Senate District, incumbent Senator Samara Brook, and we're bringing her on now. So we'll give her a moment to get connected. Senator, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. Always nice to talk with our elected officials and candidates. So we had sent along some very lengthy written questions. I'm going to do highly condensed versions of them to give you more time to talk. And then whatever time we have left, we'll save for some closing comments. First question is, for more than a decade, New York State did not adequately invest in the IDD system. Given inflation, a statewide coalition is seeking a statutory cost of living adjustment for not-for-profit providers in next year's budget based on the Consumer Price Index, as well as a $2 per hour add-on to direct support wages to stabilize our system. Will you be a champion for us by insisting that leadership include these priorities in the budget?
Well, thank you so much. And I just want to say thank you again for having me here. You know, Didani does so much work across the state, and truly you all have been such partners as a new legislator starting in January 2021 to make sure that I fully understand, you know, exactly the scenario that we were walking into. And I think that so many of us starting office in the middle of COVID and all that that meant for our workforce, for those who need services, the isolation it created, we really had this clarity of what we needed to do to act immediately, right? We didn't have a chance to kind of sit there and wait it out. And so I'm really, really grateful for all of your leadership and advocacy and really just teaching and working with us side by side. And, you know, when it comes to this, as you all may know already, I was the big champion for the first cost of living adjustment. In fact, I've already started working in my capacity as chair of the Mental Health Committee, because a lot of these things are intertwined. We have a lot of folks that have co-occurring diagnoses and really need more holistic help. And so really we're thinking about human services in general, and the fact that we have had stagnated wages that have not even close to kept up with inflation. And so I was really proud that under my purview as chair of mental health, and since I've joined the Senate, we've had 2 consecutive cost of living adjustments, each growing as the years go on. And I've actually already started working with many of you, perhaps watching, or many of your government affairs folks and some others in the mental health space, really trying to already start the championing of getting this cost of living included in the budget, because as folks know, you know, we have these 2 years that were in the budget from this past budget session, but inflation doesn't stop after 2 years. And the truth is we're still making up for a lot of ground that was lost compared to a lot of other sectors. And so that's really been a priority of mine, and it will continue to be a priority of mine. I've been very vocal about it, especially when it comes to, these are our frontline workers, right? And I can't tell you how many stories I've gotten, how many phone calls, how many emails of just family members just desperate, whether their kids are getting moved out of places where they've grown comfortable, right? These are their homes. They don't have the continuity of the service providers that they get to know and trust. And so all of these things are really destabilizing our entire sector for intellectual and developmental disabilities. And so I'll continue to do that work to champion. Hopefully you have seen it in the last 2 years. And, coming in as a second term state senator, we'll have all of the learnings from the first 2 years, and hopefully we'll be able to accomplish even more.
Wonderful. Second question, it relates to rate setting and getting money flowing to providers when approved. Rates typically lag months or even years from state agencies, leaving providers to guess what they'll be paid for services they're already providing. Often the state claws back money that providers have already spent. So what will you do to address those chronic problems?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think this really goes to what we saw for the preceding really decade plus before I entered office, which was essentially, and I think you said this kind of siphoning of resources out of our human services, whether it's mental health, whether it's intellectual and developmental disabilities. Our state essentially was saying to us, we do not value the work you do. And what's really sad is when you say that, you're saying you don't value the people that we serve. And that is not okay. And that is an abhorrent way to think about state programming and state funding. So really, in the last 2 years, we have tried to completely reverse what the last decade plus has meant for this sector. And I think that with the compounding of COVID-19, we at least were able to get more done, both through influxes of federal dollars and support, but also because it was kind of like all of these shortcomings were exposed more. There was no way to ignore what the state had not been doing for the last decade plus, right? And so we tried to use this moment to really show and to expose the failures and shortcomings of these sectors and the failures of New York State to fund at a level that actually helps us value the people doing this work so that they can live lives with their families and support their families, and so that they can go to work happy and healthy and ready to serve those who need these services most. And so again, that's why getting that 5.4% COLA was so important this year, and the advocacy that we put into that to get that into the executive budget so that we could even fight for more. And I think we need to continue growing that. So, that was huge that we got these 2 adjustments consecutively the past 2 years that we haven't included for 23-24. Now, I definitely have learned from you all and from others in adjacent sectors that there's now an issue of actually getting those dollars into people's pockets. And so that really comes on our state agencies, right? So the advocacy that I as a state legislator can do with these agencies, we meet regularly, whether it's OPWDD or any of the other O agencies, we have those relationships and we check in to make sure that the things that we have put into place with the intent to reach providers and those who they provide for is actually happening. So I'll look to, stand with you all again this year to make sure that we really have a united and strong front to show people, right? We need to show agencies, people sitting in Albany, we need to show them what it looks like when we have proper funding and what it looks like when we don't. And so these are people's lives we're talking about. It's not just dollars to line a pocket. These are people's lives and these are people's livelihoods. And we need to make that incredibly clear. And you can continue to count on me to be that very vocal voice on this issue to do just that.
Okay, thank you. We have just a few seconds left for any closing comments you'd like to make.
I'll just say, I want to thank you all again for your advocacy. I always say, we have some of the folks that are doing the most challenging jobs in their day-to-day, and then they're still finding time to go and advocate to state legislators and to the executive and to our O agencies for both themselves, but also their clients that they provide for, and also their colleagues. And so I'm so grateful, and that is not lost on me, the burden that you all carry to do that work. And the least I can do is show up with you and fight alongside you. So I look forward to continuing to do that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We know how busy you are, and we appreciate your time. From the 55th Senate District, it's incumbent Senator Samra Group. Thank you. And up next from the 54th Senate District, we have incumbent Senator Pam Helming, who is coming on right now. Again, from the 54th Senate District, incumbent Senator Pam Helming. Good morning, Senator.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. We sent some written questions over that were pretty long. I'm going to read short versions of them to give you time to talk. And then any time we have left at the end, we'll save for any closing remarks. So first question is, for more than a decade, New York State did not adequately invest in the IDD system. Given inflation, a statewide coalition is seeking statutory cost of living adjustment for not-for-profits in next year's budget based on the consumer price index, as well as a $2 per hour add-on to direct support wages. Will you be a champion for us by insisting that leadership include these priorities in the budget?
Yes.
Okay. Anything you'd like to add, or we can move on and save time for closing comments, whatever you'd like.
Move on and save time for closing comments.
Got it. Perfect. Second question. The process of setting reimbursement rates for not-for-profit providers is badly broken. Rates from state agencies typically lag months or even years, and providers are left to guess what they'll be paid for the services they're already providing. Often the state claws back money that providers have already spent. What can you do to address these chronic rate setting?
I would love to be a partner with you, introduce legislation that would change this, to be a champion on the Senate floor, to push for this, to do whatever I can do.
Wonderful. Okay, so the floor is yours to make any comments you'd like to make.
Thank you. So back in the 1980s, when I first graduated from college, my first job out of school was working for CDS. I was a direct service provider myself, direct care personnel. I did that for a number of years before being promoted to a house manager and then eventually to a case manager for multiple community residences. And I feel like the crisis has only continued and gotten worse, right? Even back then, my biggest struggle was finding employees who would stick around for a while. And now, fast forward 20 plus years, and I think workforce remains our number one issue. And I think we absolutely have to increase the wages. The benefit packages that many of our agencies offer are very competitive, very good, but it's the wages that are an issue. I also think that we cannot dismiss the fact that in New York State, we're losing our human capital, right? We have I think it's the third largest number of people leaving the state. If you compare us with other states, we're leading with people leaving, moving out of the state. But just getting back to fair pay, making sure that you have predictability, you know what to expect as far as reimbursement, that goes back, I think, so much of it to our New York State budget. And I understand that Governor Cuomo made commitments. I was part of that rally in 2017. And soon after that, there was a significant change in our state. We have one party rule in all three branches of government, right? In the Senate and the Assembly, they enjoy super majority status. And in my opinion, budgets are all about priorities. And when you have super majority status, you have the ability, you have the power to make those priorities a reality. So I think there needs to be more pressure put on members who are in the majority to actually get this done this year, to get it in the governor's budget, and then to get it in the one houses and carry it all the way through to the finish. I don't know if anyone has questions for me. I'm happy to answer any.
I think we have lots of people listening, but I'm the only one who can ask questions the way we've got this set up, and you've answered our questions very thoroughly. So we appreciate your time. Always nice to talk to a former DSP and somebody who worked in the field. We know how busy you are, so thanks so much for your time and your commitment. That's Senator Pamela Helming from the 54th Senate District. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.
Coming up next, we have shifting gears back to the federal realm here in the 23rd District in the United States House of Representatives. We have candidate Max Delapia. Good morning.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
Happy to have you. We sent over some very detailed written questions. I'm going to boil them right down and give you time to talk, and then any time that's left over we'll leave for closing comments.
Sure.
So the first question relates to direct support professionals in our workforce. and the need to have a separate standard occupational classification from the Bureau of Labor Statistics so that we can study and better understand our workforce. The next period for new classifications is not till 2028. We don't have time to wait. We're seeking legislation to address the issue. Will you take a leadership role in introducing and supporting such legislation?
Well, thank you for the question, and thank you for the opportunity to spend some time with your organization. I'm proud to be here, and I would love to represent you and the district. And this is an issue that's close to my heart. I don't know if you realize that I'm the board president for the Racker Center. It's a 3-county nonprofit that supports 2,600 to 3,500 special needs folks and their families. Our objective and our mission is to make sure that all of them are able to live the fullest life they're capable of. And what we do as an organization, we have 760 to 800 employees. We have a $41 million budget, and we do custom programs to provide them support in the community so that they can live the fullest life they can. And if they're not able to do that independently, we have 26 residence facilities, a respite care facility, pre-K, and audiology clinic. So the reason I bring that up is to tell you that I have some experience with the DSPs, direct support professionals, and I consider this a critical question for a lot of reasons. One is I see the impact that it has on our organization, and I understand that we can't afford to wait, because these are special people. DSPs are very special people, and they're helping do important tasks, and we need to have them paid at a level that encourages not to have a revolving door. What we were experiencing is a great amount of attrition. You know, people would come in, we'd train them, and then they'd leave because they could make more money at McDonald's. So that was causing great harm to the organization and to the people that they served, because it's disruptive and it's not good. So we are now a living wage organization. We worked 10 years to get there, but this issue is absolutely critical for lots of reasons. One of them is it's like the canary in the coal mine, to use an analogy, because we are an aging population, and there are going to be a lot of elderly folks that want to stay in their homes, and DSPs will be required to make that happen. And if we don't have a group of people that are trained and ready to do that and compensated in a reasonable way, we're not going to be able to provide them that. And so it's a very important question. The answer is yes. I will absolutely do that with a passion, because I think it's that important.
Okay, thank you. And I had read of your involvement at Racker, and very familiar with, a big fan of the organization.
Thank you.
Second question, President Biden has twice proposed significant investments into home and community-based services. The President's proposals would have led to better pay and benefits for workers, enhanced quality of life for families, and more supports for people with disabilities to live independently and work competitively. These executive proposals were ultimately not included in legislation passed by both houses of Congress. Do you support increases in HCBS funding to the states to reduce waiting lists for services?
I absolutely do. There's a critical need for that. And what we're seeing here as a dynamic in the political environment is that one group of folks, a different party than I'm in, they're willing to put social services as a bill payer to balance the budget. And that's a coming concern, because the answer is yes, I'm supportive of that. And I will do everything I can to help with that. Do you want me to explain? I don't know how much time I have, and I know you're running behind, but these are really incredibly important issues for me, and obviously for you. How much time do I have? I don't want to.
I think we've got about 30 seconds left, so you can roll it into your closing comments if you'd like.
Sure, absolutely. So what I'm concerned with as we go forward is there's going to be an effort to hold and this is kind of wonkish, I guess, but they're going to try to make Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid bill payers, and they're going to sunset those programs, and they're going to use as leverage the raising of the debt ceiling. They're willing to take a chance that we anyway, so what that means is when they sunset it, it means that it will have to be renewed and revoted on every 5 years or 1 year. There are provisions for both. Johnson want it 1 year. McConnell wants it every 5 years. But if you can imagine having people who depend on those programs, those social programs, to have it up in the air every 5 years or every year, it's cruel. It's not appropriate. And we need to take care of people. And I'm willing to do that. I'm motivated to do it. And that's all part of service. So my candidacy is not about money, power, or ego. I think there are too many people that are motivated that way. I'm a public servant. I care about our country. I care about our democracy. And I feel obligated after 32 years, 10 months, and 3 days in the Air Force, active guard, reserve, and civil service. I served as a colonel for 10 years. I retired, and they awarded me a brevet promotion to brigadier general. My whole idea is my parents taught me service gives life purpose, and that's the way they lived their life. They're both World War II vets, and that's the way I live my life. And that's the reason for my run, and I would be honored to have your support, and the votes from your community would be greatly appreciated, and I appreciate you for what you do. Any questions?
Well, thank you. We're behind schedule. We're going to have to move on, but appreciate your presence and your time. We know you're busy. So that's candidate Max Delapia from the 23rd Congressional District. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Have a good day, sir.
You too. Coming up next from the 136th New York State Assembly District is incumbent Assembly Member Sarah Clark. Good morning, Assembly Member. It looks like you're connecting. Looks like you're on the go. So we're running a little behind. We apologize for that.
That's okay.
I'll do condensed versions of the questions to give you more time to talk, and then we'll save any remaining time for any closing remarks. The first question has to do with the fact that we, as part of a statewide coalition, are seeking a statutory cost of living adjustment for not-for-profit providers in next year's budget, based on the Consumer Price Index, as well as a $2 per hour add-on to direct support wages, stabilize our system. Will you be a champion with leadership for those priorities?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think part of the issue that we see is how hard it takes to fight for the increases that we have gotten for direct care in the last budget. But if we don't just permanently fix it, we don't need to be having these fights every year, and we need to stabilize both the workforce and the long-term planning of our nonprofit service folks who hire and sort of manage these kinds of places where this workforce is. So for the stability sort of all around, and then that will ultimately give families the ability to make their long-term care decisions or their long-term planning decisions or whatever it may be. And I think it would actually increase the workforce in a much more meaningful way and stabilize it. So absolutely, I'm in. It's the only way to really get where we know we need to go, which is to not have these fights every year.
Okay, thank you. So the second question is, when funds are approved, we need them to flow, and rates from state agencies typically lag months or even years. Providers are left to guess what they're going to be paid for services they're already providing. Often the state claws back money that has already been spent. So what will you do to address those chronic issues?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is I think we saw a deterioration of our state agencies over the last few years due to multiple issues, COVID, workforce issues, but also not an investment in sort of the backbone people that do the work every day to help support our agencies, our people, our families. And we've started to invest in that and bring back that workforce, but we need to do better. I think untangling some of the bureaucracy is really, really important. We've seen this everywhere, everything from here in Rochester, from Mary Cariola to even some of our preschool programs and different things where they're still waiting on rates from 2 or 3 years ago, let alone figuring out what their rates are now to go plan forward. so yes, these are things that we have to put, if it's more resources, more bodies, more training, let's do it. But if it's also just looking at the process and trying to figure out where the hangups are and understanding what those are. And we as a state legislature need to have that. We need to have a collective voice sort of pushing back on that and saying this is the number one need. Sometimes it's not even a matter of getting more money. It's a matter of just getting an answer, right? I'm happy to pull back the curtain anywhere on any of these issues and use my voice wherever I can to push forward on this. It's one of those nonsensical things that you're like, this should just be solved. So wherever I can be helpful, I will on this. Happy to really champion that piece of it for sure.
Okay, thank you. So we have about 30 seconds left for any closing remarks you'd like.
I can't thank all of you for what you're doing to really engage, collaborate, build coalitions around some really important issues. We were so pleased to have you guys participate in our meeting with the commissioner on sort of long-term planning for IDD and housing and all the different things that weigh on parents and families' minds that we know weigh heavily. And we have not to date had really good answers and long-term plans to do that. So your voice collectively is so strong, and I really appreciate all that you do, and we'll continue to champion. Obviously this personally affects me and my family, and our extended family having some of their own personal stories, but also friends of mine. So I think everyone does. I don't think some of the issues that you guys fight for doesn't touch. There's no one it doesn't touch. So I'm just so thankful for you guys. I am like champion number one. I always will be ready to raise my hand when you guys need it. And I'm just really thankful for what you do.
Okay, well, we know how busy you are. Appreciate your time and your accessibility. From the 136th Assembly District, Assembly Member Sarah Clark. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Up next, we have two more candidates. Our next is from the 137th New York State Assembly District, incumbent Assembly Member Demond Meeks. And we're just waiting to bring him in, get him connected to audio. So again, from the 137th Assembly District, incumbent Assembly Member Demond Meeks. Good morning, Assembly Member.
Good morning. How are you?
We're doing okay. Sorry, we're running a little bit late. Thanks for hanging in with us.
Yeah, I just left it up and I went on to doing something else, and I'm like, okay, well, eventually they'll get to me. So I'm here, and like out of my peripheral, I saw you come on the screen. I'm like, oh, okay, here we go.
Well, it is certainly not a reflection of our esteem that we have for you. So that we left you waiting. So thank you. We sent over some detailed written questions. I'll go through quick condensed versions of them to give you time to answer. And then any time left over, we'll ask you to make closing remarks. So the first question relates to funding. Given inflation, a statewide coalition is seeking a statutory cost of living adjustment for not-for-profit providers in next year's budget based on the Consumer Price Index, as well as a $2 per hour add-on to direct support wages to stabilize our system. Will you be a champion for us by insisting that leadership include these priorities in the budget?
Yes. My track record, I have been a champion in advocating for organizations and for community members who are in these situations. There's definitely a need for a cost of living adjustment. And what we just seen recently from the federal government, the increase in the Social Security benefit, right? This is affecting everyone across the board, our seniors, our retirees, our families, working class, our children. So we have to be intentional in paying. I'm not just an advocate of a minimum wage, but a living wage to allow people a means to make a living for themselves as well as their families. And in turn, when you look at the rate of inflation, we have to do the best we can as government to rally and bring the resources to the table. And these particular industries, they've been in dire need for some time before the onset of the pandemic. So, we have to continue to push and advocate for the cost of living adjustment, as well as additional increases, because we want these jobs to be attractive, right? We know that this industry, there's a major need in this industry. So we want to be able to attract people who come to the work, not just, for a check, but that has a level of passion and can appreciate the dignity that's shown by way of a quality wage in the workplace.
Okay, thank you. So the second question is, once we get the funding approved, it needs to flow, and the process of setting reimbursement rates for not-for-profit providers is broken. Rates from state agencies typically lag for months or even years. Providers are providing services, not sure what they're being paid for them, and often the state claws back money that has already been spent. So what will you do to address those chronic issues?
I'll continue to work with the advocates, with labor, as well as my colleagues to push for changes as it relates to payouts. One of the challenges that we've discussed is the fact that different industries, in particular these not-for-profit organizations, have to pay the money out and wait for a reimbursement from government. And sometimes those more often than not, those reimbursements are lagging far behind, and it puts these organizations in really tough situations. And for me, before being a state assembly member, I was a labor organizer with 1199 SEIU. And one of the challenges we would often come into one of the challenges we would often face would be when we would advocate for wage increases and benefit increases, it would always go back to the state reimbursement rates and how far behind we were as a state on those reimbursement rates. You're talking about, advocating in 2015, but the reimbursement rates were still in, the 90s or early 2000. And I just think that that's unacceptable. And we have to continue to advocate, and not only advocate, but truly fight to change such practices. And some will often say, well, hey, where's the money going to come from? Where's the resources going to come from? Are we going to increase taxes or what have you? But when you look at different industries, there's a number of industries, in particular, the Wall Street moguls that receive bonuses that aren't taxed, like a number of our day-to-day wages are taxed. So I think we have to think out of the box and call for more responsibility on those who have more. To he who much is given, much is required. So with that being said, I am an advocate for a millionaire's tax and looking at how we can generate more resources as a state from the most wealthy New Yorkers.
Okay, thank you. We have a few seconds left for any closing remarks you'd like to make.
I just want to say, when you look at some of the things that we've been able to accomplish over the past 2 years, I think it's a reflection of having probably the most diverse legislature in the history of New York State. We are a Democratic stronghold. And with that, you have people from the community that's, blue collar, everyday people that can relate to the issues, as well as, I would say, past transgressions from things such as the Rockefeller drug laws, the challenges with fair wages in the workplace. These are things that myself and a number of my colleagues have experienced personally. And when it comes time to vote and advocate, we take these things to heart and we fight to do what's in the best interest of not just us as individuals, but what's in the best interest of the masses. I often see folks saying things such as, well, as a landlord, I wouldn't want, a different level of accountability. Well, the reality of it is we have to do what's in the best interest of the millions of New Yorkers who happen to be renters, the millions of New Yorkers who happen to be working in a full-time job, but not able to stay afloat. So another thing that we're mindful of is when we advocate for these resources and wage increases, to look at things and challenges such as a benefits cliff. And that's a practice of where a person may make $2 too much to be eligible for a subsidy that they may receive for rent, energy costs, and so on. So one of the things that we're looking at is at the benefits cliff, and how do we implement changes to those benefits, opposed to just saying, hey, we're cutting you off cold turkey, is done. Look at how we can implement a gradual change as far as helping an individual transition based upon making more wages, but not just sending them off that benefits cliff. So I just want to say, you know, I've been here one term now. It's been a joy to work with my colleagues, and we are intentional in getting the business of the people done. And I look forward to continue to serve not only Rochester and Monroe County, but New York State. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We know how busy you are. Thanks for hanging in with us as we get back on schedule here. This is 137th New York State Assembly District, Assembly Member Demond Meeks. Thank you so much.
All right, take care. Thank you.
And our final guest for the day from the 58th New York State Senate District is incumbent Senator Thomas O'Mara. Senator Tom O'Mara from the 58th New York State Senate District. Good morning, Senator. Looks like we're still connecting. Good morning, Senator. Sorry we're running late. Thanks for hanging in with us.
That's quite all right. And I switched from my phone to my computer, so it worked a little better. But pleasure to be with you. I know we're running behind, so I'll be as brief as I can.
All right. Well, I'm going to shoot the two questions at you. I'm going to read condensed version, certainly from what we sent you in writing, and then whatever time we have left at the end, we'll invite you to make some closing remarks. So the first question is, given inflation, a statewide coalition is seeking a statutory cost of living adjustment for not-for-profit providers in next year's budget based on the Consumer Price Index, as well as a $2 per hour add-on to direct support wages to stabilize our system. Will you be a champion for these budget priorities?
Absolutely, without question. I have been throughout my time in the state legislature, both in the Assembly and in the Senate. I have been very supportive of our IDD community, and certainly will pledge to continue to push forward in those efforts.
Okay, thank you. Then the second question is, the process of setting reimbursement rates for not-for-profit providers is badly broken. Rates from state agencies are typically months or even years behind. It leaves providers wondering what they're going to be paid for services they're already providing. And often the state claws back money that providers have already spent. So what will you do to address these chronic issues?
Well, I'm well aware of those issues. The slow payment, unfortunately, is not limited to just you guys. It is across the board, and it's very frustrating when we do things in the legislature and then the executive drags their feet to implement them, or drags their feet in making payments that they're obligated to make. But I think the most egregious part of this is that changing the rates after the fact and actually clawing back money. We should absolutely be pushing in the legislature to reject that going forward, to make sure that if there is going to be, first of all, I don't know why there should be a reduction in rate on anything that's being provided right now, because the rates are so inadequate as they are. But if the state, if the executive is going to make that determination, then it should be going forward only, and not be clawing back into what you've already expended or received.
Okay, thank you. We have a minute or two for any closing remarks you'd like to make.
Yeah, sure. Fortunately, I am unopposed this year. My district covers the Finger Lakes and Southern Tier. The new 58 Senate District is I retain Steuben County, Chemung County, Schuyler County, and Yates County. I am losing the Tompkins County and Ithaca portion of my district, which is unfortunate because I had a great relationship with the Francisco Racker Centers. But I'm picking up, in exchange for Tompkins, I'm picking up Tioga County, who Francisco Racker has facilities in, and Seneca County. So right next door to Tompkins on the north. And I'm also picking up the east side of Allegheny County. So I've got a more expansive district, a stronger district for myself, frankly. But in my position as the ranking Republican on the Finance Committee, I can assure you that I will continue to advocate for and fight for the IDD community, these rates that are needed, the cost of living increases. The executive, Governor Cuomo, and the fast food wage was a disaster for so many industries, but primarily yours and direct service providers was egregious. I don't know whether it was 2 or 3 years into Cuomo's administration when he cut $80 million out of the budget for direct care providers. We fought as a Republican conference in the legislature when we were in the majority then to get that money back, and we did get it back into the budget. It wasn't without a fight, but I can assure you, based on my past record, of my commitment to your interests. So thank you for having me today.
Well, thank you. We know you're busy. Thanks especially for your patience and sticking with us as we got off schedule there. We appreciate your time, and good luck with all your travels. It sounds like you'll be in the car a lot in the next couple of years.
Yes, I will. But I love to drive, and it's a beautiful district to drive around. So I'm sorry to be short with my answers, but I know you're running behind, and out of the interest of getting to everybody today, I just wanted to make it as brief as I could, but assure you, you have my support.
Thank you. Good to see you as always, Senator. That's Senator Tom O'Mara from the 58th New York State Senate District. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our interviews for today. Thank you again to the candidates for their time and for caring enough about our community and our state and our nation to run for office. We know it is a big commitment of time for them and their families. Please remember that Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th. To find out about early voting and mail-in voting opportunities, call the Board of Elections in your county or visit their website. However and whenever you do it, please make sure to vote. Let's make our voices heard to provide the best possible support for people with disabilities in our communities. For Donnie, I'm Jeff Patterson. Thank you again.